Hello and welcome to the Accessibility Guys podcast. I'm your host, Robb Williamson-Bynoe. Please take a minute and like, follow, and subscribe if you would. That'd be awesome to get us out there, get more listeners and more viewers and all that good stuff. I appreciate that. Joining me today is an old friend and colleague, Chris Dyck. Chris and I have known each other for, I think we're getting on to 20 years, buddy.
It's about that. Not bad.
We've been connected sort of through social media. We talked, had coffee a couple of weeks ago. We always seem to be on each other's, TikTok or Instagram or LinkedIn or whatever. Oh, there's Chris. Oh, there's Robb. Yeah,
I'm in the right spot here. Yeah,
we're either doing something right or something wrong. I don't know what the case is, but here we go.
Yeah.
So we first met working at Extreme Fitness, which is a gym that no longer exists.
No longer exists. Yeah.
That's usually the way they go. But it's one of those jobs where it wasn't the best job necessarily, but it had great people. The staff was awesome.
Yeah.
And that's
why I stayed.
Yeah, me too.
The only reason I stayed. Like, I loved the people I worked with. I met you, and we always had good conversations like that, and that's what kept me coming. Got to be honest.
I was a fitness consultant, and I'm like, okay, glorified salesperson, getting people to buy personal training and all this stuff.
That's right.
Am I really feeling it? Not necessarily, but again, I enjoy the atmosphere. And you were a fitness you were a health consultant. Is that what it was?
Yeah. Well, I was kind of everything. So I did the thing that I was doing there was fitness consulting, but I was a personal trainer, a nutritionist, kind of all around. I could sell a service that I could perform pretty easily as well. So there was kind of a really unique relationship there. But yeah.
So
it was,
go ahead.
Yeah, it was a fun thing because that way I could get to really know people, and it made it. I never really thought of it as selling so much because it was easy to work with people and make sense of why they should be doing something with a professional, right?
Yeah.
So it was kind of an easy fit for me to do that, right?
And I always consider myself as a customer service person. Like, I'll sell you what you want, but I'll be the first person to sniff out, no, this isn't what they want, and I'm just selling for numbers and quotas and all of that, and that's just not me at all. So I'm like, I don't know if I can do this for very long.
Yeah. You gotta have a certain way of understanding how to, or not understanding, but how to connect the dots and why someone really needs the support, Exactly. And like there's sometimes you're like, some guy comes in and it's like, I don't think he's good. He's a good fit for support. You need support, but sometimes people wouldn't accept it, right? So, and of course, you had a variety of different people working in the club as a trainer or a nutritionist, and sometimes you just knew the personalities wouldn't work as well, right? So that was the other thing, right? I trained a lot of people for competitive side too, so those people I would see generally outside of the club. Right. Mm-hmm. And those were people that were really serious, and they had a goal, and they want to make sure that they got there. But it didn't necessarily mean that I could bring them into Extreme Fitness and say, here's, Robb Williamson, and he's gonna do your training. Right. Mm-hmm. Knowing that Robb doesn't have any experience with training a competitive bodybuilder.
Exactly.
Right. So it was really difficult in that way, but I could easily line up a team for a really good potential competitor and and set them up for success. Right.
So that's a good segue. So when we met, you were pretty jacked. So obviously you weren't born that way. So share with the listeners your fitness journey.
Oh, yeah. I started when I was about 10 years old, and my dad, at the time, he was having some heart trouble, or just let's call it health trouble. It wasn't necessarily heart, but he was, he quit smoking and quit drinking, kind of decided he wanted to go through a whole transformation. And so we started off doing this Army training system. I don't really remember what it was, but I remember it had all these diagrams of what you were supposed to do. You do push-ups, and then you run, right?
Mhm.
So my dad and I would run around the basement, and just fight our way around the basement. And then we okay, we do jumping jacks for for the next 100 reps or something like that, right? But that was what we did. And eventually I started saying, okay, I need something a little more than this. Or, I mean, really at 11 years old, what more do you think you need?
Yeah.
Right. But I thought automatically that I had to do a little more. So it was, weights came in probably by the time I was about 12 or 13. And I started working in Gold's Gym when I was about, I'm going to say 14, 15 years old. And that was a Gold's Gym in Ajax. I don't know if you remember that one.
No, I wasn't enduring them at the time, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. It was a good club though. It was one of these original Gold's Gym kind of things where it's just dirty bodybuilder type of
Yeah.
thing. And I
Yeah.
was just kid that, like everybody was, hey kid, how you doing? And it was kind of fun because I grew up around a lot of guys that were into bodybuilding. And so I met a lot of really good people, and it kind of kept me intrigued. So I kept going, and I had some good experiences with it. So, really kept moving. But back then, and this is sort of where, I've evolved a lot over times, but back then it was like everybody lifted heavy, right?
Hmm.
And form was a thing, but it wasn't really a consideration. So
Yeah.
if you looked terrible, you still lifted it, right?
Yeah.
And of course, when you're young, if you do something that's really bad, and yeah, you lifted the weight, but you felt your body fall apart in between, you lifted it, you got your goal, but you damaged yourself. So that's
Oh
basically
yeah.
over time. I wasn't built for heavy lifting. Like you and I have a similar bone structure where we're not designed for heavy lifting, but I can build muscle really easy, but strength was never a thing. So I was always trying to keep up with these guys who were truly built for powerlifting, right?
Yeah.
And so over time, my body just kind of started breaking, and that was really early. So like around 20, well, probably about 18 or so, I was really
Mhm.
feeling it. Like my back was really bad, and at that age, like when you start feeling like your sciatic fall apart, and
Hmm.
your knees are hurting, your hips are hurting, and you start thinking like, is this how it's really going to be?
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
so um at a point I started training a little smarter, and that was
Hmm.
around 20, 21, 22. And at that point I started saying, okay, I gotta get train a little lighter, better form, because that's just what works for me.
Yeah.
But it was kind of too little too late, right?
Hmm.
um at By that point my back was really starting to feel it. And um I'd go for a walk, and the walk was always really short
Hmm.
because it was just like it was like just really hard to do it.
Hmm.
Not so much pain, but everything was an effort.
Yeah.
And um and then when as I went along, I started a software company. And during that time, I was sitting a lot. At that age, you don't think, if you're starting something and you're really motivated. And I'm kind of obsessive about things like that. So I started in, and I was at that desk 22 hours a day, and then
Wow.
I'd say, I'm a little tired, and I'd sleep for 2 hours, and I'd sit back at my desk. And
Hmm.
and getting into the gym kind of waned a little bit. It was 2 or 3 times a week, and it was once every couple weeks, and then it was once a month kind of thing. And then at a point it was several months in between, right? And I was smart enough to know going into the gym that I didn't have to go in and crush it every time,
Hmm.
but and try to keep it at the level I was always at. But at a point I started not getting into the gym enough. right? And it was really obvious that I wasn't getting into the gym enough. Um, if I get into the injury side, where the things really started to hit was my, the walking started to get harder. If I wanted to go for a hike or something, it was like, oh, just don't make me do that, right?
Mm.
And it was harder and harder and harder. And then one day, I went to get out of bed and stood up, and my legs just flopped on me, and I
Wow.
fell to the ground and pulled myself up with my hands to get back onto my bed. And you have this moment of what just happened, right? I think you've been there, right?
Yeah. Yep.
You just don't have the control of your legs, and something really bad happened. And so I slipped a couple of discs, and then um, muscle spasms to follow, and all the rest. Um, I Knowing what I knew about exercise, I said, okay, I'm going to try to start getting back into shape again and make this work. But the pain the day after was so bad that, like, my legs just they would shuffle to walk. It was
Mm.
maybe a 6-inch gait to
Wow.
move my legs, because everything was just so locked up. And I try to get onto a treadmill or something like that, just to get some movement. I know that movement would have helped, but nothing was working. And 2 years later, after shuffling my feet and painful mornings at the hospital, I decided, okay, I really have to make this happen. So my doctor set me up with a pretty good surgeon at the time, a neurosurgeon that was pretty supportive.
Hmm.
And but because I was young, I think I was only maybe 28, 29 years old at the time. And they were really hesitant to do any surgery, right?
Mm.
Um, so it took another 2 years of that to finally get to a point of actually operating. So more pain,
So four
and
years of that, basically. Wow.
mm,
That's a
yeah,
long time.
yeah. It's a long time. It's a long, long time. And by 1999, that was when the surgery was. I was pretty bad. Like, and again, I really tried everything I could just to, I would go to the chiropractor, I would go to physio, I would go to massage. Just nothing was working. Chiropractor would make it worse, and
Mm.
I couldn't be consistent with it enough. Treatment was really getting expensive,
Yeah.
and so I finally got the surgery, and I really thought that was going to solve the problem.
Hmm.
Right? I said, okay, I've done this. I've done everything I can now. Let's get out and try to do normal things. And because they ask you to basically lay down for a good almost a month, the muscle atrophied more, right? So after a month of doing that, my hips had locked up again, right? And
Mm.
things just weren't working properly. So I was now we're into almost another 2 years after the surgery, and that was when my daughter was born in 2002.
Hmm.
And I just said, I want to be able to reach into the crib and pick her up without not having to bend my knees and
Yeah.
cripple myself to do that. So I I made a real just a strong commitment to myself that it started off with walking up the street, right? Walking up, walking back. And I did that for a few days. I said, okay, I'm going to try halfway around the block, right? Got there, came back. And it's just every day just got successively longer, right?
Mhm.
Um, once my daughter was born, I worked from home, so I had this opportunity to be with her through the morning, and I would put her into a backpack, and we would just go for a walk. Again, it was longer, once around the block, and then a couple of times around the block, and then around the neighborhood, and then around a much bigger bunch of neighborhoods. And eventually, I could walk reasonably well. So I decided, okay, I'm gonna try to get into the gym, and that was hard too, because so many people knew me from the gym scene in Durham, that they knew who I was, right? Mm-hmm. And then I come in and I'm a wholly different person. Yep. And so that was really tough, because I'm coming back in and people are like, Chris, looking at me in the gym. Is like, yeah. And
you're half the man you used to be.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I've got a decent smile. So of course that's what people said. They would say, like, I recognize the smile right away, but I just wasn't sure. So
you're Chris from the head up, but
yeah, exactly. So I would get into the gym anyway, and I would start doing really, really basic stuff. And but at the time, you still have this mentality of, I'm going to go right back to doing the things that I did. And of course, I would do, I started just doing, the 3-on, 1-off kind of training, just like body part kind of thing.
Yep.
And it was too much. Like, I was always sore, and I never really killed myself in the gym at the time. It was just sore all the time, because now I was also off painkillers, right? So, and the painkillers were strong enough that they would help somewhat, but like, when you have a back problem, like, it's just like no painkiller fixes it, right? So and that was the problem. So you're taking these things just on doctor's orders, but it really doesn't do anything. So anyway, I eventually stopped using them just to see if I could make it. But the workouts were painful, and getting through that healing process was painful. So after about a year or so of that, now it's like 2003, and I was just like, I can't listen to what the doctors are telling me to do anymore. Like, they're saying no deadlifts and no heavy stuff. And by heavy, I'm talking relative. I'm not like 700-pound deadlifts or anything like that, but doing things that I needed to do, right? Like squats, lunges. 60. What's that? The 3-on, 1-off kind of training, just like body part kind of thing.
Yep.
And it was too much. Like, I was always sore, and I never really killed myself in the gym at the time. It was just sore all the time, because now I was also off painkillers, right? So, and the painkillers were strong enough that they would help somewhat, but like, when you have a back problem, like, it's just like no painkiller fixes it, right? So and that was the problem. So you're taking these things just on doctor's orders, but it really doesn't do anything. So anyway, I eventually stopped using them just to see if I could make it. But the workouts were painful, and getting through that healing process was painful. So after about a year or so of that, now it's like 2003, and I was just like, I can't listen to what the doctors are telling me to do anymore. Like, they're saying no deadlifts and no heavy stuff. And by heavy, I'm talking relative. I'm not like 700-pound deadlifts or anything like that, but doing things that I needed to do, right? Like squats, lunges.
60% of what you normally do, or what's the
like just exercises that I knew I should have been doing, right? Training my glutes so that my back isn't taking all the pressure, things like that. There were like that sort of training. You had to get smarter about it than being I just gotta train, do kickbacks for lunges or instead of lunges, or and do hyper extensions for my lower back. None of that was working. Like, I was trying everything to not do what they told me not to do. And so eventually, after about a year of doing that, now we're into 2004, I had my second daughter was born. And this was like, once again, it was like a renewed commitment. I have to make this work so that I can be there for my daughter. And so I just said, screw it. I'm gonna do deadlifts. I'm gonna do walking lunges. I'm gonna do everything basically stability wise to change the way my body works. And like, that stuff is hard. Like, any of the stability stuff, if you were just into just lifting weights, stability is a good thing to have. And it helps everywhere, right? So I did it. I did the deadlifts and I did lunges. I can't even think of some of the other things that they were telling me not to do, but those were the big ones. They were like, oh, don't do those, and don't train your neck, because that'll just ruin your spine. And it's training my neck is something I have to get back into now. But it's all of these things, if I listen to them, I'd be worse off.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing with pain, right? You want to listen to them because you don't want to have more pain. You want the pain to go away. But again, the advice you're getting isn't helping you. I remember back in the day, I was squatting 4 plates and pushing, bench pressing 3. And then I went to the gym, I think it was at Extreme, and someone said, what do you do for core? I'm like, what's core?
What's that?
I didn't do we didn't do that. We just went to the gym. We threw around as much weight
I thought only athletes do core.
And then they had me do this real rudimentary type of core exercises, and I couldn't do it because I had no core. And that probably would have helped me out from a lot of the injuries that I experienced, when I was lifting, because the tree trunk wasn't firm and wasn't strong. I had the good show muscles and whatever else, but I wasn't completely whole as I should have been in terms of the fitness that I should have had. So,
oh, absolutely, And it's very easy to, like, especially when you're in pain, it's really easy to look at a machine and say, that's the one I'm going to use today. That's where I'm going to sit today, And
sitting, that's the thing. I can sit and do it. So that's what I'm going to sit down.
The key word is that's where I'm going to sit today,
Exactly.
So you don't have to put myself through pain.
Exactly. Speaking of pain, I remember you posted a couple of months ago on your socials about you being in some sort of you were in some sort of crisis where you had to go to a physio or something, and they kind of saved your life. Share with us your experiences with therapies, the good ones and the bad ones, and what's worked for you and so on.
Yeah. So this is something, I think that's something, it's a trickle down effect from, you heal one thing and another falls out. Right. So somehow my lumbar spine has kind of adapted, and it's been pretty good. But a couple of years ago, it's one of those common stories, right? Everything feels great, and I was about to, I was leaving for Dominican Republic. And just as I was leaving my apartment, I reached out to grab the keys off the counter, the kitchen counter, and my back just went tick, and I said, that doesn't, that tick, you know that tick, and I was like,
it's usually from lifting heavy weight, but not keys, but
just keys, and I was like, oh no, this is not good. And so I get to the airport, and I'm starting to feel it's a little stiff, and I'm like, okay, when I get to the airport, I'm gonna sit. I'll be that weirdo that's doing some stretches in the in the airport. So I sat down there. Of course, my wife is looking at me like I'm crazy, and but I'm like, I think this is going to be really important. I have to do this. By the time I got to Dominican, I was already like, my leg was already like not functioning properly,
Mhm.
and I'm trying everything that I can just to be like normal. Like everything is okay, just
Yep.
keep walking. You know what I mean, right? Like
Yeah.
nobody sees
You
me having a
you
problem
can
here, right?
you can handle the pain, but you don't want people to think there's something wrong with you. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I get to the hotel, and everything, it seemed like when if I sat down or something and stood up, my back would really tighten, right?
Mm.
And I like start spasming. We finally got into our hotel room, and I laid down. I said, "Oh, this is so good," but that's when it got worse. Um, my back, the muscles in my back would spasm so bad that my entire body would cripple, like would just crunch up
Mm.
right into a ball. And then I would have to, play like Incredible Hulk, and just, really like scream to pull myself apart
Mm.
and kind of collect myself and figure it out. But that whole night, it was so bad because we were actually in the wrong room. We were supposed to be in another room, and this one was terrible. It was like party central. We were supposed to be in this
Oh,
adult area where everything was just kind of calm and all
yeah,
the
yeah.
rest. And so my wife eventually went to the front desk and said, "This is ridiculous. We're in the wrong room, and my husband's in a lot of pain." Um, they eventually put us up into another room, but nonetheless, I'm getting a little off track. But
Mhm.
the key was, that's the start of this pain. So this is like 2023, I think. So a couple months ago, and I'd had a pretty good success run where about a couple years I'm thinking, okay, everything's pretty good. The back is feeling all right. I was just feeling a little bit of a tightness under my rib cage, right? And again at the gym. This time it was at the gym, so it was like if it was going to happen, it was supposed to happen there, not picking up my keys. And
Exactly.
I just bent down to pick up some weights, and I hadn't even picked it up yet. I just bent down, and I hear the tick again, and same thing. Like I went home and I stretched and I treadmilled and did everything I could, just everything I could, just to fix it. By the next day, it was just crippled again, and I called my chiropractor and I said I have to get in. So I got in. He was really great in fixing, or making some adjustments that made it bearable. But the worst part was after, because I was on my way home and my back was so tight I could barely get out of the car.
Mhm.
Um, Walking back up to to my condo, I'm like, okay, again, just your ego is like, I can't let anybody see me like this.
Mhm.
So I'm just shuffling around and hoping nobody sees me just in this disastrous state. um the one thing that inspired the post was the next day. I felt so bad for the massage therapist because his therapist, you know, great and everything, but I don't think she was really prepared for this kind of problem,
Mhm.
right? I got onto the bed, and she was just sort of doing these relaxation kind of massage. I'm used to a guy who does an amazing job in Whitby.
Mhm.
Doug Neal is his name. Awesome guy, knows exactly what to do. And I've been working with him for years, but he hurt himself, so he was at a commission.
Oh.
And so it was like, okay, I got to do something. So I'm going to see my chiropractor's massage therapist. When she's finished, I said to her, I said, we're going to have to be careful getting me off the bed. Like it's not going to work, right? And
Mm.
it took me about 10 minutes just to slide off the bed because every motion spasmed my back, right? And I finally got one leg onto the ground. That was probably another 15 minutes now that we finally got off the bed. She's by now trying to get the chiropractor in to come and assist me to his room. And and they're helping me get my socks on, my pants on, my shirt, everything.
Wow.
And eventually I'm like, okay, I think I can move somewhat here. And I was able to shuffle my feet to walk to his office with him. And he did some adjustments that helped, but I wasn't out of the woods yet. Like there was still a lot of spasming, right? What he did helped, but again, it wasn't, the muscle was already really perturbed, right? So after that treatment, that's when I posted. I was like, I'm just grateful I have some people around me that can fix some problems reasonably quick. Because usually if you call a chiropractor or a massage therapist, that they're days or weeks before you can see them sometimes. So he was really really good to see me.
Wow, that's learned a lot more about you today, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So
yeah. That one took a good 2 weeks to respond too. Like it took a long time to finally heal up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So this is something that I know with my experience, I have things that come back. Like I have really bad issues with my hips and my glutes. I get knots in my glutes. I get pain in my hips. So I'm doing Pilates and different things every day. I have to do it every day, or I'm just I can't function. So what advice would you give to people who are struggling with mobility? Because I hear you talking about, being active in terms of, we have probably about 3 minutes here, but being active about and proactive about addressing it, and not just, the tendency is just, take some painkillers and just kind of lie around, sit around the house. But obviously that doesn't work. So.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. It doesn't work. And you really have to be motivated to fix the problem, not sit back and say I'm a victim, I need insurance. I need some insurance money here. I need someone to fix me. The only one that's going to fix you is you, because honestly, as much as the chiropractor and massage therapists are doing their job, you got to put in the work, right? Like you're saying, you got to do Pilates and stretching every day, right? I do the same. Like, even with my regular workouts, everything I do is calculated now, right?
Yeah.
I lift relatively heavy, but not heavy by comparison, right?
Yeah.
I lift heavy for most people. But in the areas like legs, I still can't lift heavy, right? But I have to really stretch and really do those exercises that I just hate doing,
Yeah. I've never been a fan of rehab. I find the exercises are tedious and monotonous and just boring. But when you get to that point where you can't function through the day unless you do it, then it's like, okay, well, I have to do it. So,
what I wish is that there was some sort of criteria that said, everybody is going to get a back problem, so do these exercises always. Everyone should do these exercises just always. It would probably fix a lot of problems.
And I'm all about lifestyle, so what I mean by that is it's something that you do on a regular basis, not to achieve a goal or to look good in your fix the problem for the summer, these superficial things, but to be able to function, just like eating healthy food, you do that so you can function.
Absolutely.
Your body needs it. So
yeah. And I'm glad you're getting over it too. Like, 'cause it's I know the struggle, and I know what you're talking about when you're talking about your glutes, cramping up and spasming, and you're saying, well, why is that happening? Like I worked out really nicely. All my form was good. I didn't use heavy weights. I stretched before and after. I did cardio and kept it loose. So what did I do wrong?
And a little bit of vanity doesn't hurt, because I'm sure a lot of people say, I could feel less amount of pain by doing less, by doing nothing, and that's what people stop working out.
That's true. Like,
you guys are working out, and you're experiencing a lot of pain. Just don't do it. I even had a doctor say that to me. I said I started playing squash, and that game killed me, chasing that ball around. And he goes, "Well, just stop playing." I'm just like, "That's not the advice you're supposed to be giving me."
That's not the one I'm looking for. Yeah.
What do you be out of shape?
Yeah.
Anyways,
that's right. That's right.
Well,
sometimes,
Chris,
right?
Yeah. Exactly. It's been a pleasure having you on. I appreciate it.
It's been great, Rob, always.
I'm sure people are going to gain from your insights and your wisdom and your experience. Anything you want to share about yourself before we? Yeah, for sure. Anything you want to share about yourself before we kick off here?
I think we're pretty good, man. We've told enough about my injuries and problems that someone else will have some commiseration and say, "Hey, I'm not the only one." I hope that's where it comes to,
Like Red Green says, we're all in this together.
That's right.
All right, it's been a pleasure. Take care of yourself.
Yeah, absolutely, buddy. Cheers.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.